We are joined by the Lieutenant Governor of the state. That is, of course, Mr. Dan Forest. How you doing, sir?
I am doing okay. Casey, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, and I got to tell you, just as, and we talked, obviously, when we were doing some of our extended broadcast, it seems like everywhere you go in North Carolina, there's some sort of story to be told, from rising rivers to what Swamp New Bern to what's the coast going to look like at that beach we like to go to torrential mountain rains. This is truly one of those things that impacted all of North Carolina. What have you been seeing over the past few days?
Oh my gosh, it's just it's a mess. You know, I'm actually driving through Kinston right now as we're heading back down east again today, and the Neuse River is actually higher today than it was yesterday. So there's additional flooding, not like Matthew flooding yet as far as the crest, and I don't think they're calling for that with the Neuse, but it's still rising. And so you have these rivers all across our state like Cape Fear and others that are still rising, and hopefully they stop soon. But it really is a mess, Casey. We were down in New Bern yesterday just helping this young man gut his house out, and he had about 5 feet of water hit his house. And, these things hit these random neighborhoods that haven't been flooded before, and these people don't have flood insurance in most cases. And, it's tragic. It's just tragic. There's already, mold growing all throughout the house and all that sort of thing in just a few days. And this is just going to take months and months to recover. Thousands and thousands and thousands of homes just like this all over our state. And it's just a really tragic circumstance. And here's the challenge. The challenge is the media doesn't really cover it in the right way, if you can imagine that. They go to the scene along New Bern at the coast where everybody can see the hotel, and as soon as the water recedes, they go away. But there's thousands of homes around New Bern that have been destroyed or damaged in just typical neighborhoods with typical people. And there's no news stories about this anymore. So people think, well, this really wasn't that bad of a storm after all. So it really is pretty horrific. Well,
and one of the things that I saw as I was watching about a half hour of one of the news stations flew a helicopter down to Wilmington, and along I-40 they were showing where I-40 turned into a lake, which was just south of Wallace, which is amazingly far north. And then it opens up again, and then they were in the city of Wilmington buzzing around. And in the city of Wilmington, even though around the fringes it was floodwater palooza, it was really interesting, and they didn't focus on it because it wasn't sensational enough. In the middle, it looks like rush hour, and it's people just moving around in the city of Wilmington, trying to find either supplies, checking on friends and neighbors, going and trying to get building supplies to shore up their home. So it looked like an ant farm just in the sheer busyness of it. Now there's road access, there's power being restored. The response on the part, especially from a power standpoint, has been very impressive in some of the hardest hit areas. And that's one of the things that is a constant point of discussion when something like this happens.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were blessed not to have the great wind event that we were anticipating we were going to have when it was a Category 4 and then 3 and 2. It was still bad. There's pockets of a lot of wind damage all over the place. Obviously, the closer to the coast, the more of that wind damage you have, and so trees down on power lines and that sort of thing. But we have tens of thousands of power workers in our state from all over the country. It's really unbelievable, and these guys are just working around the clock to get power restored, and they do a phenomenal job. So you're seeing that happen more quickly than I think in previous storms, which is a real blessing here. But, the flood stuff is the thing that you just don't see. Like this neighborhood we were working in yesterday in New Bern, the water's receded. If you're just driving by in your car and you look over to the right or left, you're not going to see water. But there was 5 feet of water in these houses.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's really hard to explain to people. Until you get down there and you see the nastiness that you're cleaning out of a house that was flooded a few days ago and see how dire that is for people. It's not just about the structures, and that's kind of what we start to think about, the wind damage, the trees down, the structures. It's about human beings that are displaced from their homes, and they have nothing left. That's the real tragedy of the story.
The year before Katrina hit, I was down in New Orleans. I did the whole me and some buddies, let's go to Mardi Gras, which, by the way, you can be hungover for 3 weeks after that. But I went back a few years after Katrina, and one of the most striking things to me is, especially in the French Quarter, where they had made an effort to not only maintain the waterline marks, but actually accentuate them. And it hits you when you're standing in the middle of Bourbon Street and you see on this sidewall where your chin is, that's where the water was. And you can't even process that much water coming. Just stand in your home and now think about that's where the water is. And you might get some semblance of an idea of what was just the overwhelming amount of water that permeated that city and now New Bern and others around North Carolina.
That's just New Bern, yeah. I mean, then you have Lumberton and you have Fair Bluff, which may be gone after this. I mean, you have cities and towns all up and down the coast and, dozens of miles inland from the coast that are this way that you'll never see, and then you can take the farmland on top of that, that's been flooded, that's, crops that are lost, animals that are lost, all this kind of stuff too. But you still have to, right now, there are places where they've still been doing search and rescue as of yesterday in places like Columbus County. They were still doing that as the river was rising. So you have a lot of different, time frames of this thing playing out across the state, from search and rescue to recovery to rebuilding and all those types of things, all at one time. And, the challenge with the president's coming in today, and we're going to go down and meet with the president. The challenge in the message today is, Mr. President, what you see today, even as you're flying around and flying over this storm or going and visiting things, does not tell the story of the human tragedy that's a part of this. And that's going to be a hard one to try to explain to anybody that didn't live through it. This is really the time where what I'm encouraging is neighbors to go show up. Folks like Samaritan's Purse, who we worked with yesterday, have set up in multiple cities, multiple towns and areas across our state to help these people who don't have any help. There's lots of organizations like this. If you have a church group that you can pull together your friends and your family, go spend a couple days, a day, even a half a day, whatever you can give. It gives you perspective on how vast this damage is, and you can really help out a lot. So that's what we're encouraging right now. Is it's time for North Carolinians to do what we do best, step up and help their neighbors.
I do appreciate it, Dan. Safe travels out there, and I have a feeling this will be a topic of conversation for our next few visits as well, at least.
I'm sure it will be, Casey. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.